All right, it's 1 o'clock in the morning where I live, and I decided to get a stream going just because I'm super bored and I'm not really sleepy. I don't know if anyone was out there, so I decided to start up a stream. And if no one joins, it's for a random conversation because I was watching other streams and was hoping to join, but I don't know. The one I was watching is full of people, and I don't like joining streams with 10 people in it. But oh my gosh, there's Andy right away. Good to see you. I believe that's Andy. Might change his name a little bit, but good to see you. Yeah, so I decided to boot up a stream. Oh my goodness, what the heck? Mike, I really did not. I expected like one person to join like half an hour from now, but already two people have commented. That's really kind of shocking. I'm happy about that, though. I'm happy about that. But yeah, it's been a little while. I guess more than anything, I have been doing a lot of content recently. Some people might have noticed. I don't have many people who watch my channel, so it can't be that many people have noticed. But there are reasons for that. A lot of it has to do with obviously things taking place outside of YouTube that are busy. This channel has always just been something I do in my spare time. Good to see you, Mike. Yeah, I hope you're doing well. And I do it because I know this is going to kind of sound kind of cliche. I just think that I guess I'm not different from a lot of people who do YouTube channels. I feel like there are important issues to be discussed, and I was having a lot of trouble expressing myself on other people's channels, and so I was like, all right, let's get my own channel started. And so I haven't. This isn't something I dedicate myself to. I wish I could. If I could clone myself, I've said this before. I would probably just sit around and do YouTube videos all day. Unfortunately, I can't do that. But a couple of weeks ago, on actually it was October 3rd. So wow, that's 2.5 week. What is it, 2.5 weeks ago? 3 weeks ago? I can't even. I had my first debate, like formal debate, on the standing for. I mean, ever. But that first debate I ever had was on the Standing for Truth YouTube channel about the deity of Christ. And I'm actually really surprised because at how basically the post-debate reaction, I don't know what I was expecting, but I think this is probably just my own personal biased opinion, but basically the debate was about the deity of the Christ, and I debated a Trinitarian name who goes by the YouTube name Praise I Am. He has a channel called Praise I Am, or they change the name every so often. And for the atheists, they're not going to care about all this. It's about Christian theology or doctrine. It's probably just more entertaining than anything for them. But this is something a lot of Christians take very seriously. Is Jesus God? Which to me, it's just like you'd have to do a lot of convincing you'd have to bring a lot of proof to me to demonstrate that any human being who lived and died is literally the God of the universe. Like, that's a pretty high standard to meet. SFT 1990 debate. yeah, that was the one. Like, anytime if someone's gonna try and convince me that somebody is God, it's gonna take more than words in a book. Like, I'm gonna like, even if that book is the Bible, which is supposed to be the standard of all Christian doctrine and belief, which isn't true, actually. It's not how it was originally supposed to be, but let's just go with that premise. I'm sorry, that's really not going to cut it. Like, this is why the Trinity is so difficult. I'm going off topic here. I wanted to go more about the reaction to it. I think that this is how I'm kind of thinking. I think I destroyed the Trinitarians so badly that everyone's pretending like the debate didn't happen. That's actually what I think happened. I might be wrong about that, but I was expecting like people who I've been having conversations on Christian YouTube channels for years now, several years now, and I've been on the channels of some very popular Christians who have their YouTube channels. Some of them have tens of thousands of subscribers, and they host conversations on this and that. So there are a lot of people, even if they don't watch my channel, who know who I am, who have discussed things with me over the years. And a lot of these big names actually do have at least heard of me. I'm obviously not significant. I'm not going to try and sit here and pretend like I'm an important influencer of any kind. But after my first debate, the video currently has just under 1,400 views. And I know that some of the people who watched that video were people with whom I've discussed, and literally nobody has reached out to me to have a conversation or to set up a future debate on the topic. Yeah, I need to go back and look and see who was there. Anyways, I was expecting, I guess what I was kind of expecting was it lead to more people like reaching out to me and hoping to generate more discussions. And maybe it will. Maybe it's just because I haven't doing much content. But I honestly feel like my arguments were so strong and irrefutable that there's a really good chance that people were like, "Oh, A's philosophy, he's nobody, he's insignificant." But part of me wants to think that I crushed the Trinitarian and destroyed the Trinitarian belief system so badly that people it's one of those things where like they have to pretend it didn't happen. And I'm looking at other people's channels who I think would have seen the debate and who usually do like debate reviews. Like I've seen some people who've done debate reviews, like people with smaller channels. But I looked at some of the bigger channels who usually like review debates about theology, especially ones that take place on a bigger channel like Standing for Truth. And everyone just kind of ignored it. And I don't know how to interpret this. I don't know if it's because I'm so insignificant that my opinions aren't worth taking seriously, or if it's kind of in line with my theory that I actually just crushed him so bad that they can't process it and they're in denial about what happened. I don't know. I'd like to believe that that's what happened, but I don't actually know that that's what happened. I'm just trying to figure out what's going on. But I have another debate on November 22nd, and I fully intend to, crush that opponent as well. Again, whether that'll actually happen or not, I don't know. But I'm definitely going to come prepared, way more prepared than I did for the first debate, because the first debate I thought had been canceled until 2 days before it happened. So I hadn't prepared anything 48 hours before, but I managed to cook up a PowerPoint presentation within 48 hours and make all. I knew the arguments. I just really needed to like prepare the material for presentation display purposes. But this debate that is coming up in November the thumbnail is already posted, so I know it's going to happen, and it's I'm looking forward to it. I have a good idea of the kind of the arguments I'm going to make, and I also know a lot about the kind of idiosyncratic ideas of the person whom I'm debating, who's Charles from the Layman Seminary YouTube channel. He's a free grace proponent, but he kind of has his own. I guess they kind of all do. They have their own way of going about things and defining terms. I really don't think he's going to get away from me. He might. Stamy. I don't think I know who you are, but good to see you here. I was going to do some debate review about an evolution debate that took place in modern day debate. And also, let's see here. Let's share screen. Oh, no, let's not yet. I don't want y'all to see the Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I on a lower. It's been a long time since I have been on his stream. It's been like at least over a month since I've been to his stream. So I guess I had just lost track of that. I apologize for that. I hope he and that whole crew are doing well, though. Let me share screen here. I really like my new computer, how it doesn't like freeze and like crash out like midway through my presentations. That's really nice. Uh, Maybe I'll do a little bit of a review of a debate that took place a couple days, 5 days ago on Modern Day Debate, which I think is a pretty good debate channel. I mean, you the host James is a Christian, so people can argue just it's inherently biased or whatever. But I think they have good debates. They allow. It's one of those ones where you have uninterrupted openings and things like that. I thought we'd just take a look at the evolutionist side and see what they had to say for a second. The opening statement for Planet Peterson. And I watched the debate, but I've kind of forgotten exactly what was said. But I remember thinking the arguments weren't that strong. And then maybe I'll post a link. We may go for an hour here. It's pretty late. It's already 1 a.m. where I am. I'm just not sleepy. I was looking at other channels like, all right, let's see if this, did I share audio? I can't remember. If y'all can't hear audio, let me know.
Debate conference featuring that debate and many others.
Hey, everybody. Today we are debating, is biological evolution supported by the evidence? And we're starting right now with Planet Peterson's opening statement. Thanks for being with us. Eric, the floor is all yours.
Thank you very much. So I want to tell a little story sort of for my opening statement. So does the evidence support biological evolution? Well, we're going to begin with the fossil record. So there's really no valid supported alternative model that accounts for the structure that we see the fossil record. It was well known in the 18th and 19th centuries that the Earth has gone through multiple epochs where life on the planet took on completely different forms.
All right, so we're starting with the fossil record. I'm just going to be straight up. I think the fossil record is terrible evidence for evolution. Not just because there's a number of reasons for this. I just think at a very philosophical level, what you're trying to do with evolution, and we're talking about evolution from basically a universal common ancestor. You're trying to prove as evolutionists that all life forms evolved from some primordial creature, which would resemble sort of an amoeba, a prokaryote of some sort. You started off with, really everything technically would have started off as some sort of self-replicating molecule and gone on from there, and eventually developed into kind of the simplest modern organisms we find today. Then the proto-organisms would have died off. There's no evidence of them. There's nothing. The simplest organisms today cannot possibly have been the original life forms because they're just too complex. But once you do get to the kind of the amoeba level, the single-celled prokaryotes and things like that, then you're going to try and evolve from there into multicellular organisms and eukaryotes and things like that. So this is what you're trying to prove. And to do that, you need to demonstrate essentially that the mechanisms of evolution can accomplish that. What are the mechanisms of evolution? The mechanisms of evolution are genetic mutations there are various ways that genes can mutate and create new genetic information, allegedly. And then, of course, natural selection will choose the more favorable mutations. So this is how you go about proving evolution. What the fossil record does is simply prove. I know that there are creationists who will say the dinosaurs were put there by the devil or they don't even exist. That's not my opinion. My opinion is that these are real, and I think that any rational, sane person should accept that dinosaurs and these fossils are real. I think this is a pretty fringe view that's kind of like almost a canard put out there by evolutionists. Oh, the creationists won't even admit the false. Okay, there are those people, but really, of that, the serious, it's not a serious argument to almost anybody. It's like random people on YouTube who are making the case that the fossils are fake or whatever. Wait, where was I going with this? I know I'm not letting him speak, but I just think at a bare philosophical level, all the fossil record does is prove that these organisms existed. The evolutionary biologists will draw lines from one type of a creature to another, but there's no way you can replicate that diversification according to their theory in a laboratory. You can't go back and say that mollusks or trilobites evolved from mollusks or anything like that. And mollusks evolved from whatever came before them, the Cambrian and the Precambrian and the Ediacaran and all these things. Basically, to me, the fossil record simply demonstrates that life forms other than the current ones existed in the past and they've died. You can't prove that any of these organisms evolved from something other than what they are shown to be by the fossils, or that they evolved into anything else. Now, what he's probably going to argue is that we can see a gradual progression from the more simple type of organisms to the more complex, which is just, I hate to say it, it's just not true. Like, this is one of those almost urban legends that there's like this place out there where the deeper you dig in the ground, the fossils become simpler and simpler until you just get to these microbial mats of algae. People, that is a fantasy land that exists only in the minds of evolutionists. They find fossils all over the world in all kinds of conditions of preservation and things like that. They're all jumbled up and upside down, and they find things that are anomalous all the time. They can't explain it. They try to explain it this way and that way. There's really not a place on Earth where you can, I mean, there's a couple places where you can go and find, increasing complexity if you dig in stratified layers. But there are also a lot of places where it's all just kind of jumbled up. But anyways, let's just kind of keep going. Let's just listen to what he has to say, the actual argument.
So taxonomists have known for literally centuries how to diagnose a species based on anatomical characteristics in its fossil remains. Taxonomists have also known for centuries how to do this with current living organisms as well. So in the fossil record, just like today, we have there are birds, reptiles, mammals, amphibians, fish, plants, all of that stuff in the fossil record, plus countless other organisms exist, but they're almost exclusively different from the organisms of today, which is an important detail. The fossil record also contains countless organisms that don't really fit into any modern groups, such as early synapsids. That's a good example. So from these observations, there is an idea develops, and the idea is basically that, well, organisms come about through reproduction. That's where every organism we've ever seen comes from. So therefore, the organisms of the present are the descendants of the organisms of the past.
All right, let's analyze his argument thus far. And obviously he's going to say more, so maybe his argument will be developed. But what he's argued thus far is that organisms of the past are different from the ones that we observed living today. And we know that organisms reproduce. Therefore, it stands to reason that organisms today are descendants of organisms from the past. Now, that is one possibility, but another possibility is that that these organisms didn't necessarily give rise to other lineages, and they didn't, they reproduce, but there is no diversification from what they actually are. It could just be that these organisms just simply existed and died out. It could also be the case that evolution happened, but not necessarily by the mechanisms, the naturalistic mechanisms that are proposed by, skeptics and atheists and things like that. It could be that it was intelligently guided evolution, like maybe an advanced space alien civilization came to Earth, saw these organisms, manipulated their DNA, and turned them into something else. Which, what I would like to see them actually try to prove is that genetic mutations can give rise to novel organisms from a completely naturalistic standpoint. And the fossil record doesn't even come close to doing that. This is what the atheists need. They need to get from basically an amoeba to modern organisms without any sort of mind being part of the process. And the fossil record simply does not cut it. It simply does not cut it. Even if you want to argue that it demonstrates some sort of evolution happened, it could have, just like Richard Dawkins has admitted, it might have been some sort of alien race that came in and manipulated everything. Or obviously, as I would take it, it was God either working on as a special creation or perhaps developing things over time in some sort of interventionist way. I don't know. But they are a long way from demonstrating that evolution happened naturalistically by simply pointing to the fossil record.
However, since organisms of the past are different from organisms of the present, this suggests that species change over time. This is evolution. There have been many iterations and ideas.
Because organisms of the past are different from organisms of today, then it stands to reason that evolution happened. I'm sorry, no. I'm not going to accept that premise. That's not a good argument. Or it could be that these organisms just simply existed, and we do find fossil remains of modern organisms, whale species, fish species, mammalian species, reptilian species, all over the place. We understand that rapid fossilization could occur because we observe it. So just because they were a wider variety of organisms in the past, and most of them had died off, doesn't demonstrate evolution. I think this is a really bad argument, personally. It might be convincing to some people, but I don't know. I'm not buying it.
About how evolution is proposed to have occurred. Charles Darwin was not the first person to imagine it, but he was the most successful. So anyways, this idea that species change over time. Talking about that, going back to the fossil record now, what we see in the fossil record, it also includes the gradual emergence of entire genres of organisms. Angiosperms come after gymnosperms. For example, placental mammals come after
Notice he's just making claims. And angiosperms come after gymnosperms. What's your proof? How do you know that? Oh, they dated the rocks where the fossils were occurred. Are you sure the dating processes were correct? Are you sure the rock layers? How do they date the rock layers? I know that originally they were dating the rock layers by what type of creature they found, so it was a very circular reason. Then they had to come up with radioisotype dating. And there are obviously a lot of flaws with that methodology because they have been found to be incorrect in a lot of places. So I don't see any actual proof or evidence being offered here for the claims they're making. Not that there isn't evidence, he's just not putting it out there.
egg laying.
I would really like to see him basically go through the research or the scientific studies and show why angiosperms came after gymnosperms. Can they really say that definitively? I don't know.
Mammals, birds come after, they are more recent than reptiles, for example. So the fossil record is unambiguously structured in this way, but what supporting evidence is there for that sort of conclusion? That if organisms are produced from reproduction and the organisms of the past are different according to the fossil record, then does evolution really occur? Well, if we remember that taxonomists can classify living organisms or extinct organisms into groups based on their characteristics. So an example of how that works out in the history of studying evolution is birds appear to be the descendants of certain theropod dinosaurs. So there should be a missing link.
Do they? Do birds appear to be the descendants of theropods? Or are there just simply birds and theropods, and they share some similarities, but they are also different in various ways, just like birds and reptiles. Look at living organisms. You have everything from simple-celled organisms, marine, aquatic life, land-based creatures, and you have all these different types of organisms. And up until about a couple hundred years ago, no one assumed that they were, related to each other through common ancestry. But taxonomy was a system developed by Carl Linnaeus, who was a young Earth creationist. So they have taken a system developed by a devout Christian young Earth creationist and flipped it and said, this is a prediction of atheistic Darwinian evolution. No, it's not. You can classify things however you want. It has nothing, it doesn't show anything about evolutionary lineage or history. None of that. It's just, this is how things are similar. This is how things are different. Some things are more similar to others. There's no evidence that, an amphibian is going to give rise to a reptile and a reptile to a bird. There's none of that. This all has to be imagined. So this is actually, these guys are using pretty poor arguments.
Charles Darwin made that prediction, and just a couple of years after he published On the Origin of Species, we found Archaeopteryx. We also have Hesperornis. There are multiple, quote unquote, missing links or transitions for birds. We also now know, with respect to birds, but we did not know this in the 19th century, that raptors, the theropods that birds evolved from, they were completely covered in feathers. So that explains why birds also contain feathers. It's not.
So Jurassic Park got it wrong. Raptors were covered in feathers. Now we know that. Cool.
Not just a coincidence. And we also now, in the modern day, know that birds are more closely related to reptiles than any other group.
We now know that birds are more closely related to reptiles. How? What is the evidence for this? Is it just me, or are these guys not actually presenting any evidence? They're just making claims. This isn't evidence of anything. This is what the evolutionists, they make claims based on their fairy tales and their stories, and there's no actual evidence to support any of it.
Of organisms. So that's a specific example, but it goes on and on like this for just all forms of life that we've been able to study in the same kind of detail. Scientists predicted the degree of relatedness between species decades before we had the technology to do that with genetics. So this provides not only a test for how to confirm evolution, but also how to disprove evolution. Evolution would have actually been really easily disprovable. All that would have had to have happened was for weak, zero, or contradictory correlations between the genetic hierarchies between species, insofar as they matched the taxonomic brackets that were set up.
You know what? You know what he just said? He basically said evolution would be refuted if genetic evidence had overturned the hierarchies that had been developed over the years based on morphological characteristics. And I have a video on my channel detailing all of the massive, massive discrepancies that scientists began to discover between genetically developed lineages and morphologically developed lineages. He doesn't even know that he does not know the evidence actually. He just gave a refutation of evolution that has already been demonstrated by the scientific literature. I have a video on my channel from several years I don't know if it's probably about a year ago now, at least, called the Scientific Evidence Against Evolution. I think it's from like late 2023. The Failure of the Tree of Life. And I go through in that video, I'm not asking anyone to watch it, but scientific literature where scientists began analyzing the genetic similarities between creatures and trying to classify them based on the genetic evidence instead of their phenotype, their morphological characteristics, what they look like on the outside, essentially. And they were flabbergasted that the genetic evidence was overturning everything that they had. Not everything. A lot of things did match up, but a lot of things were completely confusing and bewildering to them. So I guess he just doesn't know that happened. I don't know, but again, if you can go watch my video on it, and I could maybe eventually I'll pull it up again and show the information again. How, yeah, when scientists started sequencing genes of the different organisms, in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, and they really started doing it quickly, it overthrew a lot of the taxonomic categorization that had already taken place based on morphology. So he's admitting that he doesn't know it, but he's admitting that evolution has been refuted according to his own standards.
Up before we even started doing genetics. So the only acceptable kind of result to disprove evolution for example, would be humans sharing 0 genes with the great apes or 0 genes with any organism. The only
Why would that disprove evolution? Why would human sharing? First of all, why would humans share? This is another just philosophical fail on Planet Peterson's point. He presents himself. I'm not going to ad hominem right here. Let's just stick with the argument. Morphologically, which means the physical shape of the organisms, humans are very similar to apes. We're obviously not 100% similar, but we obviously do share a lot of similarities. What the percentage? I don't know. 80, 90%. Who knows? You would expect similar types of creatures to, if they were designed, excuse me, since DNA is the code of life, if you want to call it that, is the genetic programming is what controls development and basically the structure of the organism. You would expect similar organisms, if they were designed by the same creator, to have similar coding. And the more similar an organism, the more similar the coding is going to be. So that's just a prediction that would be based on intelligent design. Just like if you have 2 different cars developed by the same person, the same company, and they look similar, you would expect I guess in these days, the digital aspect of the car, the computerized aspect of it, to have similar coding. Why would you expect? Let's say Ford develops 2 very similar cars, like a Dodge Charger. No, a Dodge is not a Ford car, obviously. A Ford Mustang and whatever the other Ford, and another Ford, sports car. What is it? I don't know what another one is. I'm sorry, I'm not good with cars, but whatever it is. The Ford Mustang and the other sports car would probably have similar computer coding, and the parts would probably be put together in a way that resembles the Ford production facility or processes. So none of what he's saying actually demonstrates evolution. It falls within the line of predictions that would be made by intelligent design proponents.
Way for 2 species to have 0 relation between them is if they share 0 genes in common. But obviously that's not what happened. We do share genes with all life on this planet, and the amount of genetic similarities we have is exactly what you would expect based on those taxonomic brackets. We're most common with the great apes, less so in common with mammals in general, but we have more in common genetically with mammals than we do with any other kind of animal life on this planet, and so on. Another possible refutation for evolution would have been contradictory correlations with respect to genetics and taxonomy. So if there really were some genetic similarities between species, but they contradicted or they produced no correlation between taxonomic groups, then evolution would have essentially been.
He actually just refuted himself. Maybe he just doesn't know the evidence. They have found the exact same gene sequence, and maybe I'll go find this evidence too and bring it up. They found that in animals that can vocalize to one another, they found the exact same gene sequence in a number of distantly related types of organisms, and the chances of that basically code for the vocalization process. A couple examples are singing birds, and I believe dolphins were also part of it. Basically, they have gene sequences that code for the vocalization, apparently, is where it's important. And the chances of that same gene sequence evolving randomly in multiple lineages is something like 1 in a gazillion. But yeah, these unrelated creatures, they found all kinds of things like this, where unrelated creatures that had similar morphological characteristics had the same exact gene sequences that had apparently been found randomly by the evolutionary processes multiple times in life's history, despite the fact that it being found even once was astronomically unlikely to begin with. So this actually also has happened. He just simply doesn't know the evidence. And again, I'm not presenting the evidence myself right now, but I'm aware of it. And I just find it striking that these things he's giving the refutation of evolution, just simply doesn't know the evidence has actually already proven him wrong.
Disproven. If you could find that, yeah, humans and the other apes, they do share some genes, but then the apes are most similar to bananas than they are to any other any other animal. Well, no evolutionist would have said that, yeah, the banana and the ape are more closely related than the apes are to any other animals. So that's the kind of contradictory data I'm talking about. That would have completely falsified evolution. But again, obviously that didn't happen. The point is, we knew exactly how to disprove evolution, but that didn't happen. So tonight's debate isn't about a competing idea. It's about whether the evidence supports evolution. And I think it unambiguously does. Exactly what evolution predicted has come true countless times. So you can't really ask the question, if evolution were true, what would the evidence look like? And not respond with a description of the evidence we currently have. And in fact, evolution deniers who have a grasp of biology know this. And I actually have a clip of that I can show you. So I'll share this real quick, and then that'll be the end of my opening statement. And I didn't figure out, there we go. All right.
Just to be sure, does it play audio? Did you want it to have the audio play?
Did I need to select that before I started sharing?
You did. Plus, it is something that copyright-wise, I would prefer if you narrated it instead of playing the exact audio. Is that possible?
Well, here,
just a really high-pitched voice.
Yeah, I won't share the audio then. But as you can see here, and funny enough, Donnie, one of my interlocutors is in this debate here. So I asked the question to Jerry Berkman here, who's an evolution skeptic. I said, if evolution was true, what would the fossil evidence look like? And they're having a very specific debate. The topic was, does the hominin fossil record support human evolution? You'll have to take my word for it, I guess, or I can bring up the closed captioning maybe here. But Jerry says, oh, well, the evidence would look like the evidence that we currently have. I don't know if I can skip. So yeah, Jerry, go ahead. I suppose if evolution was true, many of the fossils we found are probably what we'd expect to find. We find animals that have traits of humans, and we find animals that have traits of other primates. So I went a tiny bit over my time there, trying to set that up, but that's basically it.
You got it?
Wow, that was weak stuff right there. I mean, obviously there is other evidence of evolution that is much stronger than what he presented, but if I was going into a debate and trying to support evolution, I just can't imagine making the arguments he did and think I actually proved my point. Like the fossil record and some of the other arguments he made, which the actual facts actually do demonstrate that he's already been refuted. This is pretty bad on the evolutionist side. Very bad so far.
We'll kick it over to PhD Tony.
Sorry, I thought that it would be Donnie next.
Oh, is that how you guys? Pardon, I missed that during
sorry, no, I'm okay either way, but that was my understanding. I'm just not sure. If you want me to go, I can go.
Oh, yeah.
Unless you can go, yeah. Because Matt and I have ours connected, basically.
All right, no problem. All right, then just allow me to share.
You got it?
Is that coming through? Yes, okay. So just let me play this, okay? So I just want to start with a comment, because this often comes up in debates that lay people don't really understand peer-reviewed literature. There is an entire corpus of peer-reviewed studies in reputable journals. Many of those will later be shown to be in error.
By the way, reputable journals are ones that don't allow creationists to publish anything.
So let's restrict ourselves to the ones that haven't been shown to be in error. Many of those are not validated by later studies. Now, if you take data from a reputable study that has been repeatedly validated, but disagree with the interpretation, you are very likely simply incorrect. The very process of peer review and replication all but preclude the possibility that any alternative...
You all remember that fact of logic that if something isn't in peer-reviewed literature, it isn't true, right? So this is where we're going at this point.
Interpretation is valid. If you take hypotheses from otherwise reputable studies that haven't been replicated, you can't treat them as though they have equal weight to hypotheses that have been replicated. And if you take hypotheses or data from studies that have not been peer-reviewed in reputable journals, you cannot treat them as consistent with the literature. You cannot treat them as logically well-structured or having sound methodology. I'm not saying that they don't. I'm saying that that has not been tested. And this is the value of peer-reviewed literature. Now, let's get back to the central question. If evolution were correct, what would we expect the available evidence to look like? We would expect a gradual progression from simple to more complex organisms through time. For example, we would expect a transition from invertebrates to vertebrates, with early skeletons mostly cartilaginous and not consisting of mineral bones. We would expect gradual convergence towards modern forms, though the convergence would not be uniform. If creation were correct, what would we expect the available observational evidence to look like? Well, we would expect sudden and spontaneous emergence of life forms without precursors. We would not necessarily expect...
Wow, has he... what's crazy about this is he actually does get into this idea proposed by Stephen Jay Gould of oh shoot, what did he call it? Spontaneous, punctuated equilibrium. I'm sorry, I almost forgot. Where a vast majority of organisms do pop into the fossil record without any apparent direct or easily confirmable predecessors. I mean, there are quotation after quotation of scientists showing that most creatures pop into the fossil record absolutely spontaneously, and a number of different, a wide variety of different, like turtles. No one even knows where they came from. Butterflies, a lot of different types of insects and plants, flowering plants. And when you talk about things like birds and evolving from reptiles, they just assume that birds evolved from reptiles. But actually, they can't prove it. So there's a gradual progression. It went from amphibian to reptile to, well, actually, no. There are fossil amphibians, there are fossil reptiles, there are fossil birds. The idea that they were evolved into another is just, it's not scientifically demonstrable. It's not falsifiable. It's just a tale. You can. Let's just hear what he has to say.
Chronological ordering, since the progress of creation is arbitrary. There is no necessity in creation that things be chronologically ordered, since the process of introduction of new life forms is entirely at the whim of the creator. We would not expect gradual convergence toward modern life forms, since modern life forms were created in their present form ab initio. So what does the observational data set look like? Here's a simple timeline of the history of the Earth. We can get into the validity of geochronological techniques if my interlocutors wish. I'm well prepared to defend this timeline. Our first evidence of life on Earth comes from organic carbon that is low in carbon-13, in the isotope carbon-13, that is found in zircons at 4.1 billion years ago. So we have our first data point there. We also find stromatolites at 3.7 million years ago in Greenland. A stromatolite is a concreted structure that is formed by microbial colonies. These are preserved in the record and can be dated. So we've got our second data point here.
They can be dated. Just trust me, bro.
We also see microbial mats. These are the earliest known marine microbial mats and the terrestrial microbial mats.
They find microbial mats in every strata, top strata, bottom strata, middle strata. I guess they just assume that these are all just 4 billion, 3 billion years old. I don't know. Like, find them in every. I know they find them in every strata. They find sea creatures on top of Mount Everest in the Himalayas. So, people, this is a mess.
Only emerged about 2.4 billion years ago. So after about 1.6 billion years, we've gotten as far as microbial mats. We get to macroscopic fossils of life forms in the Ediacaran. This is about 635 million years ago, or about 4 billion.
Claims being made, very little actual evidence. We find them in this strata, and it's this old, and we know it's this old because I'm saying so. So you believe me, bro. Just trust me, bro.
Years after our current estimates suggest the Earth finished forming. So now we're going to focus in on from the Ediacaran to the present. So now we're looking at a timeline of 635 million years. We see early on in this period the emergence of the Cambrian vertebrate.
Wow. So the Cambrian is actually like the earliest strata with animal organisms. And it has fully formed vertebrates right there, right at the very beginning, with eyes and a brain and a vertebrate and a fully developed body system. Let's go back. Let's go back to the Ediacaran creatures. This is interesting.
So
look at this. Let's try to draw the line. Let's draw the lines on paper.
We've gotten as far as microbial mats.
We go from microbial mats. Okay, we go from microbial mats. This is his evidence. He's presenting this. We go from microbial mats to whatever these things are. Wait a minute. Whatever these things are, they're certainly more complex than a microbe. What's going on here? Do we just, did the microbe just get knocked up and pop these things out? Can you really just draw a line from a microbe to whatever these things are? Look at this thing. It's like a worm. These things are like little mollusks and stuff. Did they jump straight from microbial mats to mollusks and worms or whatever these things are? Or little they look almost like plant leaves or something. I don't know what they are. Okay, let's keep moving.
Get to macroscopic fossils of life forms in the Ediacaran. This is about 635 million years ago, or about 4 billion years after.
So we're at
the Earth finished forming.
Little shells.
So now we're going to focus in on from the Ediacaran to the present. So now we're looking at a timeline of 635 million years. We see early on in this period the emergence of the Cambrian vertebrate.
Whoa! That was a jump. We went from little shellfish to giant sharks real fast. Whatever. What is this? It's like a giant. It's a fish. It's a fully formed fish. Look at that. You went from a little shell that barely even looks like an organism. You can barely tell what it is, to like a freaking shark. What's going on here, folks? Is that how it works? Are we drawing lines? Are the paper? Are the papers on? Are the lines on paper like really connecting? I don't know. I find this quite interesting.
Cambrian vertebrates like Hycoichthys at about 510 million years. We see the emergence of the first.
So wait, let's try to go back. 14.
So the Cambrian vertebrates like Hycoichthys
So we go from the Ediacaran to the first vertebrates. Just jump straight from whatever those things were to vertebrates. Do you realize how complex vertebrae are? You need a brain. You need an entire body system. I mean, the amount of mutations that would have had to occur at intermediate forms would be absolutely massive. And he's just jumping straight from these little, like, almost like seashell type things to vertebrates with fully formed brains, digestive systems, circulatory systems, eyes, mouths, locomotive appendages. What the heck? Do they just get to jump like that? Where are the intermediate forms?
At about 510 million years, we see the emergence of the first insect at about 400 million years. We see evidence, this is footprint evidence of the first amniotes, or the first reptiles, and we see that come in at about 350 million years. So we are seeing exactly what was expected. We are seeing...
We're seeing it. We're seeing it. We're seeing things that happened 350 million years ago. Well, 100... Again, the assumption is that there are actually 120 million. Notice he's saying we're seeing. We're seeing. I'm sorry, no one was there to see things that happened 120 million. We have no idea how much time actually passed. You can put your faith in the radiometric dating, but again, is that correct?
Gradual increase in sophistication of life forms, and we are seeing gradual convergence towards modern forms.
We're seeing it. We're seeing it. I'm not seeing it. Who was there to see it? What does he mean we're seeing it? Do these people actually think that they're seeing this, I think, which is interesting to me psychologically.
The first mammals enter that we're aware of in the fossil record have entered by about 160 million years. Our next jump-off point is the Cretaceous Paleogene extinction event, about 66 million years ago. Moving on from there, we see the first primates enter at about 55 million years. By 55 million years, the first primates are in the fossil record. The first apes enter at about 20 million years ago. The first hominins enter at about 7 million years ago. And it's important to note about these early ones. You can see in this figure, we've got chimpanzee on the left, modern human in the middle, and then Sahelanthropus, which is one of these early hominins, in the middle. And you can see the position of the foramen magnum. This is the point at which the vertebra enters the cranium. And you can see that for Sahelanthropus, it has an intermediate position in between the chimpanzee, which was not fully bipedal, and the modern human, which was bipedal. We can see this again in the hip bone and in dentition. So if you look at the bottom of this figure, you can see on the left, those are hip joint bones from Homo sapiens, Australopithecus afarensis, Ardipithecus ramidus, and Pan troglodytes. You can see that Ardipithecus ramidus and Australopithecus afarensis have very human-looking hip bones, whereas chimpanzees, Pan troglodytes, don't. If you look on the right, down the bottom, you can similarly see modern human foot on the top, where you have an inline big toe and you have a very rigid foot structure. Ardipithecus ramidus, for instance, does not have an inline big toe, but it does have a very stiff outer foot. So these are very human-like. Properties. We can break this down even more. Let's look at a skeleton of Ardipithecus ramidus. Let's break down its human-like and its ape-like characteristics. It has small canines and a human-like teeth arrangement, so that's human-like. It has a very
30-second warning.
That's ape-like. I'm almost finished. It has very long arms relative to its body, but it has bipedal hips. It has loose wrists, straight flexible fingers, and is not a knuckle worker. Its big toe is not in line, but its outer foot is stiff. So this is an example of something intermediate that is converging towards the modern form that humans eventually adopted. And I would argue that this is exactly consistent with what we would expect the fossil record to look like. Thank you.
Thank you.
Radiometric dating is the only dating method, but it's a very solid method as is based on one of the laws of physics, reactive decay law. The ice cores are also used as cross-reference. Ice cores, eh? So during those Earth heating events, the ice cores just managed to stay there for millions of years, hundreds of millions of years. Because I remember the climate change people were saying that Earth has undergone massive heating events in Earth's history, and I guess the ice didn't melt at that point. Somehow it made it through. Anyways, let's go back a little bit. This is really interesting to me. So he taught basically his whole argument is things go from less complex to more complex gradually. But there's a concept here called punctuated equilibrium. This is biologydictionary.net. So how reputable they are, I don't know. Punctuated equilibrium is a theory that states that evolution occurs primarily through short bursts of intense speciation, followed by lengthy periods of stasis or equilibrium. The model postulates that 99% of a species time on Earth is spent in stasis, and change happens very quickly. So this is what the fossil record actually shows, folks. The theory also provides a reasonable explanation for the absence of intermediate forms in fossil records where new species seem to appear from ancestral forms abruptly and ultimately disappear without experiencing any apparent morphological change during their existence. Support for punctuated equilibrium is seen in the fossil record. The impact of reproductive isolation has been observed by biologists. Okay, so they're talking about a little bit of this, but basically what they're trying to do here is make their theory unfalsifiable. So yeah, things evolve gradually, but they also evolve really fast. So how are we supposed to falsify it? If they can claim that everything's really gradual, except when it's not, how is it falsifiable? So they create, by doing this, an unfalsifiable theory. Take a look at this. Oops. Wait a minute. Let's see if I can get this focused. No. The concept of punctuated equilibrium was, to some, a radical new idea when it was first proposed by Stephen Jay Gould and Niles Eldredge in 1972. Now it is widely recognized as a useful model for one kind of evolutionary change. The relative importance of punctuated and gradual patterns is a subject of debate and research. So scientists can basically make out whatever story they want. They can say things happen very quickly, or they can say things happen very slowly, and it all fits within the theory of evolution. Well, of course, you can't falsify evolution. Charles Darwin understood that evolution was a slow and gradual process. By gradual, Darwin did not mean perfectly smooth, but rather stepwise, with species evolving and accumulating small variations over long periods of time. Skipping down, still, if evolution is gradual, there should be, I'll post a link in a second for if anyone wants to join and just chat for a little bit. We don't have to argue about evolution. There should be a fossilized record of small incremental changes on the way to a new species. But in many cases, scientists have been able to find most of these intermediate forms. Ooh, there it is right there. Scientists have been able to find most, this is PBS.org. This is not a creationist outlet. Scientists have been able to find most of these intermediate forms. Oops. Get out of here. Darwin himself was shaken by their absence. His conclusion was the false record lacked these transitional stages because it was so incomplete. That is certainly true in many cases, but the chances of each of those critical changing forms having been preserved as fossils are small. But in 1972, evolutionary scientists Stephen Jay Gould and Niles Eldredge proposed another explanation, which they called punctuated equilibrium. So basically, there were so many transitional forms missing that the chances of all of them being missing were just small. So they had to figure out a story to cover up for that. So they and a couple of scientists who are evolutionists invented the idea of punctuated equilibrium, which solves the problem linguistically. So there's times when things just evolve very quickly, like the right genetic mutations appear at the right time in very, sequential fashion, and everything happens so fast that these transitional forms just aren't preserved. Now, of course, this is everyone presupposing that evolution actually happened. But if you just look at the fossil record without presupposing evolution, what you actually see is the creationist model, which is just God created things as they are and they stay that way until they die. And there's no change. And that's why there's no transitional fossils, because nothing transitioned. But they don't want to accept that. All right. And I was going to review another YouTube video about the blood atonement necessary for atonement on Reason and Theology channel, which was a really good debate, but I won't do that. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to post a link. Oh, where? Hold on one second. We won't do that right now. All right, let's do this one. Such good production. All right, let's do this one. All right, there's the link. If people want to join, they are welcome to. I don't know if anyone wants to join. Again, we don't have to talk about evolution. We can talk about, like, what movie you saw over the weekend, or what if you watch a football game that you really like, we can talk about that. We'll talk about whatever. We don't have to argue, but if you want to argue or ask questions about something or present information, you are welcome to do that, whether you agree with me or not. And if no one joins in the next few minutes, I'm probably going to shut down the stream. And there's a significant chance I will delete the stream just because it was so random and unplanned. But don't let that stop you from getting up and making a case for whatever it is you believe. I'm just putting it out there so that people aren't, caught off guard when it does happen. Or if someone wants to engage, I guess objective ethics has been making some points. Let's actually review them. Radiometric dating isn't the only dating method, but it is a very solid method as based on one of the laws of physics, radioactive decay law. The ice cores were also used as cross-reference. I saw men dig out a plane from 1945 that was 200 feet deep in ice. Wow. Yeah, that's pretty interesting. That was from Nunya. The ice cores go back several million years, but ice melting is the only thing the ice cores measures. There is pollen layers that also get trapped, and a third element, carbon, I think, but might be mistaken about which chemical. All three use a cross reference to each other, which makes ice cores extremely accurate. Oh, we got objective ethics right here. How are you doing, objective ethics?
Hey, what's good, brother? How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Just had some time. Wasn't sleepy enough, and I was like, I'll just throw up a stream and see what happens, and here we are. So yeah, you can try to you can make a case against what I've been saying, or you can say anything else. So what would you like to say?
Well, I don't have the brain power for debate at this time of night, and I've already exhausted all my brain cells on that topic. We had dealing with the mind, the brain and the mind, and the combination problem. Did you have a chance to check that video out?
I watched the video up until a conversation started. I haven't actually watched the conversation yet though, but I want to, because I will say that guy, he seems really interesting. I haven't heard of his channel before, but there's a lot of potential there. Maybe you could tell the people who are watching about it and kind of what you discussed and what you think about are doing with that channel and your plans there, if you want to do that.
Yeah, I don't know how much of your audience that's in the room, from the people that I saw in the room, are going to be into it. I think there's a lot of apologists in there, and that's fine for whoever wants to do their thing or whatever. But I don't see them necessarily being open to anything other than the kind of their own dogmatic positions about things. But this guy is extremely interesting. So is the lady So Scott and Sophia are their names, and they're both very intelligent, and they get into the really deep philosophical stuff. Like we talked about the brain mind combination problem. We talked about the origin of consciousness, if there is even an origin to it. And you'll see we touched on a lot of that stuff in that video. I think you'll find it very interesting. And I think about you a lot when I talk to them, because unlike most Christians that I deal with, I do believe that you are sincerely looking to learn as much as just hold a particular position. I don't agree with your stance on evolution, but I'm not an evolutionary biologist, so I am not qualified to get into a debate with you about that. However, I did talk to a buddy of mine, Mark Reed, and he says he'd be happy to debate you at some point, but I figured you probably want to wait until after your next debate, and then you can focus on the evolution debate. So I'm just kind of, and I'm focusing on my own upcoming debate. As I mentioned to you before, I've got that. I'm really excited. I get to debate against an atheist for once instead of having to debate against a theist. And we're going to be debating my theory on objective ethics. And so it's going to be that is going to be a really tough debate, because not only is my opponent going to be much stronger than the Christians that I've debated against so far, but the topic itself. In fact, I think the most difficult thing for me to deal with is going to be the arguments that have come from the great philosophers in the past. And that's no shade on my opponent, because I do think he's going to be a good debater. But I've studied this topic really. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm listening to everything you're saying.
Oh, sorry. No, my phone just did. It's never gone dark on me like that when I've been on StreamYard before, but it just crashed out. Okay. So anyway, as far as the objective ethics versus subjective morality kind of concept, that debate has been happening since basically it goes back to Plato and Aristotle and the greatest minds, St. Thomas Aquinas. There's been so many people, Kant and Hume. I've just Descartes. I mean, there's been so many people that have had taken a position on that, and there's really 4 different perspectives to look at: 2 from the objective side and 2 from the subjective side. And so ultimately, by me tying my argument to evolution, what I run into is called Hume's guillotine. It's the is-ought problem. You can't get an is from an ought from an is, right? So I believe that I've actually found the bridge, because you can get an is from an ought if you use a bridge. And this is all deep philosophy and stuff like that. So I don't know how much of this you're even really into or not, but
no, this is all really interesting. Here's my thing though. I don't want you to reveal your debate strategy unless you want to, because I know like you want to save your ammo for your debate. So, feel free to say whatever you want, but I am definitely interested in watching this debate. So whatever your ideas are and you present, I'm absolutely going to see them during the debate. Just make sure you let me know where the debate's being held and when it's being held so I can watch it. But I absolutely plan on watching. And I'm actually most curious to hear your position and how you interact with someone who disagrees with you. I'm actually very interested in your debate. So
yeah, I think that's going to really push me. I do think it. Well, I don't, like I said, I don't know his angle and how much I can stay focused and my own actual, because as you know, having done your debate here recently, you can have a great argument or you can be right about everything, but if you don't stay focused, if you don't follow the proper format and all these other things, it's, if you're not thinking quickly during the cross-examination and stuff, you could lose a debate even if you're 100% right. So, I do expect that this is going to be a challenge on multiple levels, a challenge for me to stay focused, a challenge for me to make the right argument. But I do think that I've come up with the bridge, and I appreciate what you're saying, because a lot of people have been asking me about this, and I have been kind of keeping it close to the vest, so to speak, because I was talking with I may have mentioned before that I've gotten a lot of great advice from a lot of PhD and doctoral philosophers, sociologists, and authors of books who have been really generous with their time and advice to kind of help guide me along. And that's why I'm probably going to end up writing my own book about this, because they've all said that I've got a really solid argument. And they actually advised me to write a book about it, because what I'm trying to do is come up with a syllogism, make a syllogistic argument for it, because that just really strengthens my position. But to create a proper syllogism is a very technical process, and I don't need to have a syllogism in order to make the argument. And so what people have been advising me to do is write a book, because you could take your premises and make a chapter out of each premise and just make your argument, step by step throughout the course of the book. But whether I make a syllogism or not, I still have to overcome the is-ought problem, irregardless of how I approach it. And I believe I've got the bridge, because you can get an is from an ought if you have what's called a bridge, and it's a premise that basically has to be subjective and unproven. Because if it's not subjective and unproven, then it becomes another is, and so you cannot get an is from an is, right? So you have to, it has to be basically something that's not an is, but it can't be something ridiculous. Like I can't say pink unicorns, therefore objective. You know what I'm saying? It has to be something that's tangible and most likely. And I believe I've got that bridge. So I think I can defeat the if I could defeat Hume's guillotine, then I can win this debate, in my opinion.
By the way, while you were discussing that, I was listening to you. I posted the link to the channel we were talking about earlier called The Mirror Point. So I was just perusing that guy's content and kind of just sampling a little bit of it. And he sounds like a really interesting and well-informed individual. And I do recommend people. Obviously, I think you're right. Not everyone who watches my channel is going to be interested in his particular approach, but nevertheless, maybe they will. So I personally found it interesting. And
there's
go ahead.
there's now that I've figured out how to get around that, because I don't have most of these apps I do on my phone, and I need to get it loaded into my laptop and stop being so lazy about it. But I just keep that for very specific purposes for work and stuff like that. And I just don't really want to be putting YouTube and StreamYard and all that shit on there. But it does create problems sometimes when I'm trying to share links or do whatever. But I finally figured out a workaround to where I could get you through our email contact links to videos, because I've been on their channel probably 4 or 5 times now. They've had me on as a guest, and we've had every single time. It has been an incredibly deep, very intellectual conversation. We really go deep into stuff, very much like you and I started before all the other people were joining us and getting into all this arguments about the Bible and contradictions and all that nonsense that I hate having to talk about, that I seem to get pigeonholed into lately on your channel, which isn't your fault. It's just that's your community, and I get that you know, some stuff I say kind of triggers them. But when you and I were first talking, we were talking about souls and minds and all these different things that I find much more interesting, and that's kind of the stuff I've been talking about with Scott and Sophia.
Yeah.
And that's why I thought about you, because I really think that you would really, even though you're going to come from a different worldview, because the three of us, none of us believe in a God. Now, I'm an agnostic, as you know, so I give the God concept a 50-50. Sophia is a, oh God, I can't remember what she calls herself. There's a word for it. You would know it if I could remember what it is, but it's not a theist. It's not a deist, but kind of a spiritualist. There's some kind of word for it. I'm forgetting.
I saw that she called herself a mystic. I don't know if that's the word you're looking for.
Thank you. Yes, that's exactly the word I'm looking for. So she's a mystic. So she does believe in transcendental stuff and a more spiritual element to things, although she's going to have kind of a unique view from a deist. And then Scott himself, I believe he considers himself to be an atheist, but he also believes in like consciousness, and he's a non-dualist. So he's got an out of the box kind of view compared to a lot of atheists. He's not a materialist. You know what I mean?
Wow.
So most atheists are material. Yeah. So it's between the three of us, we found that we have a lot of great charisma. And a couple of weeks ago, they asked me if I do my own channel. And a few people have been asking me now if I have my own channel. And I tell everybody I just don't have the time for it, because I'm a business guy, you know what I mean? I'm like an entrepreneur. I build businesses from the ground up and I sell them and do stuff like that. And so I approach life from a business mindset. And if I was going to start a YouTube channel, for me, it would be a business, you know, and I would go at it 100%, 110%. And I'd expect to make some money off of it, you know, and I just don't have the time to justify putting time and energy into a hobby. I've got enough stuff on my plate trying to put money back into my bank account from how much I spent on my medical bills the last 2 years. You know, that took that right out of my retirement, a few $100K, and that's a chunk. I was basically retired at 40. Yeah, I was retired in my early 40s, and then I spent a few $100,000 at the doctors off the surgeries and all that bullshit. So now I got to go back to work, which is good. That's fine. I'm still young enough. I've got plenty of time ahead of me. I can do it. But the last thing I don't have time for is creating a YouTube channel. Yeah. So when I told this to Scott and Sophia, they're like, "Oh, well, we could help you out. You know, if you want, we could do something together." So I thought about it for a while, and I asked some friends of mine some advice, and they all said that I'd be great at it, that'd be a great co-host, and they'd love to see me be a part of something. So I talked to Scott and Sophia, and what I decided I would commit to, at least for now, is to join them for the first Saturday of every month. So unfortunately, my first official day co-hosting on their channel is going to be the same day as my debate. So that is
Ooh.
I'm going to have steam coming out of my ears. My brain is going to be so
Ooh.
fried by the time I do that first show with them. And our show we're going to talk about is about the technological singularity. Do you know what that is by chance?
I've heard about the like the transhumanist singularity, the point at which like technologically like overtakes it. Basically, the idea. I think I might be wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's the point at which technology overtakes humanity, essentially.
Exactly. That's very much exactly what it is. The technological singularity, the actual term, is where humanity will be wiped out because of technology. But what you're talking about is like one of the final steps in the process. Where, so we switched to this incredible dependence on technology, which we're basically there right now. AI development, like towards consciousness, is the next step, which is right on the horizon of where we're at right now. This is all predicted a long time ago, so it's kind of crazy how this is all happening. Then it goes from there into what's called biomechanics, so that people will be like half human, half machine kind of concepts. Consciousness will get fully loaded into machines, and at that point, it's basically all over. And it's not so much about a conspiracy theory like the movies like the Terminator or something like that, where the machines are just wiping us out for that reason. It has more to do with the fact, the inevitable mathematical certainty that because technology, at least if we look at it historically, it appears to grow at an exponential rate. And so mathematically, if we project into the future, technology is growing so much faster than society can evolve. Whether you believe in macro evolution or not, micro evolution and societal evolution, obviously those things are happening that we can all observe that, right? So as societies evolve and progress, like we got rid of slavery, that's an evolution in society type of an example right there, right? But societies take so long to make these significant improvements and changes. By the time we figure out how to feed and house everybody and control populations in a humane way and all this other stuff we need to figure out, technology is going to be through the roof. Like it's going to be too late. You know what I mean? So the concept is that technology will eventually just replace us. And so that's going to be the thing we're going to discuss on my first show. And then I have to jump right out of that into the debate about objective ethics. So that's going to be a long
Wow.
day.
I don't know, man. Yeah, I wouldn't want anything happening on a day where I'm going to debate. That's a tall order right there. It really is. Like I wouldn't
It
want my
is.
attention. I wouldn't want my attention divided on anything else. Like that week before the debate in November, I'm not going to be doing anything besides prepping essentially and working. But like I wouldn't want
No,
two
you're right.
events. Like I wouldn't even want
You're
to
right.
host like a 30-minute conversation like 12 hours before the debate. Like that's like how like serious just because with the debate you want your full focus. Not that you can't do it, but like you said, it's like trying to run like a 10K after you run a 5K. Like you run a 5K in the morning and then you run a 10K in the afternoon. And it's like, whoa, let's back off a little
Yeah.
bit. Let's try.
Yeah.
But
No,
I guess that's
no, you're absolutely right, brother. And you and I think are the same way in that when it comes to these formal debates, my first one that I did against whatever
Ray.
his name was, like Ray. Yeah. I was sorely unprepared for that. I still prepared pretty hard, but I didn't really know what I was doing because I hadn't been in a debate before, really. And so that was a great learning experience. But after that debate, I learned so much from that, and I got so much good advice from people. So when I did the last debate that you saw, and I just absolutely crushed that guy. Somebody, Mark Reed and Ember, did a debate review of that debate, and there was like over 50 people that watched that live, and every single there isn't a single person that says I lost that debate. And there's probably been 50, 60 some people at least that I've talked to. And to have a landslide victory like that just goes to show how prepared I really was for that debate. And it also shows how bad my opponent was too. But I just crushed that guy. I mean, there's nobody.
That was the
like
debate. That was the debate on Tristan Gabriel's channel, 21st Century Minds.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. That I mean, that guy. I almost felt sorry for him, but like the same time, the reason he did poorly is because I mean, at some level, maybe there's more truth value to. I mean, sometimes you're just bad debating, but sometimes maybe someone else is just you're defending the indefensible, and maybe he needs to consider that. I think some people times people go into debate and it's rhetoric and tactics are only going to get you so far if you're arguing certain positions. Maybe that I'm sure he doesn't want to accept that, but that could be part of the problem as well. Is that you were just straight up correct in your
Yeah, the
viewpoint.
points that I hammered that I chose to focus on were, I mean, I would have been amazed. Now, ironically, Nathaniel, my buddy who I introduced you to, he really likes you a lot, by the way. What the hell does he go by? Taurus Necris Productions or whatever.
I
He
feel like
spoke
he
very
has like
highly
a
of you.
number of. I feel like he has a number of different names he goes by, but yeah, Nathaniel is his name. But as far as his YouTube handles, it seems like he changes it from time to time. There's
He
nothing wrong
might.
with that.
I've only known the two names, but he might. I don't catch a whole lot of his content, but he actually has done a lot of. I guess he was like on the debate team in high school or something like that, and
Uh,
he's done a number. He has
yeah.
a lot more experience debating than I do, and he wants to debate me on that same topic. Ironically, so he must have seen something that he felt like he could take advantage of, or maybe something that he
Maybe.
thought I don't know, or if he's just really overconfident in his own abilities or whatever. I was shocked that anybody who watched that debate would want to debate me on that particular topic. And I was amazed because I have another guy who wants to debate me about transgender stuff based off of that debate. And I says, I'm not qualified to debate that. I've got some personal views about treating people with respect, but I don't know. I don't know enough about. I would never debate that issue. I mean, I know a lot more about evolution, and I would never debate evolution. I just don't know enough about it. I only want to debate stuff that I know I can make a strong argument for. And there's a handful of things I can debate: the global flood nonsense. I could debate ethics and morality. I could debate certain biblical stuff, but there's some issues I could debate, but it's a pretty small list. I'm not just some kind of master debater that could literally just pick a topic out of a hat and go crush a debate on it. You know what I mean? I've only got a handful of debates under my belt. But I do feel confident about the objective ethics debate because I've studied this for a very long time and I've looked into the philosophy behind it, the history, and the arguments from both sides. And I feel really confident that I'll do well in this particular debate. But like you said, you and I approached the debate in the same way. Like I didn't actually add them up, but I would guess that I spent close to 100 hours. No, maybe not 100 hours, but probably let's say around 50 hours in preparation for that last debate. I was so
Yeah.
well prepared, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so this next debate is going to be even harder. And I've already got at least 30 or 40 hours of preparation in, and I'm going to redo my entire closing statement. I keep going back and forth for different ideas. And I'm probably going to work on my cross exam some more. So I probably will be close to 60, 70 hours just in preparation time. That's how seriously I'm taking it.
Yeah. Well, I will say this: that is good, but I think that your position is extremely hard to defend. Now, maybe you will prove me wrong, but I would not want to try to argue your position because, as far as I can tell, it's there's a lot of problems. But that being said, maybe I don't. That's because I don't know what your argument is, and when I hear what you say, I'll change my mind. That's kind of the. I actually am going to come to it with an open mind. I'm just going to listen to what you have to say, and maybe you'll change my mind. I don't know. I just think that where I am right now, kind of based, and also you were kind of detailing the issues earlier that you have to overcome to win to actually prove your point. I mean, like you said, I mean, there's this debate that you're going to be having has been taking place for thousands of years, literally thousands of years,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you're gonna have to upset that whole apple cart, which you might make. Who knows? Maybe you'll say something that advances the conversation. It's possible. Like I had a
Well, I think,
conversation on the. Well, go ahead.
oh, I'm sorry. No, finish your statement.
Like I was going to say, like my first debate, I was debating the deity of Christ, which is a debate that's been happening for literally over 1,000 years. So, um, yeah, there's room to make progress in these conversations still. So absolutely, it should be interesting at the very least. And it'll help people who haven't thought about it, think about it at the very least, which is also beneficial. So
No, I agree
go ahead.
100%. The two things that give me a lot of confidence about this is, first of all, and I know this is crazy because it's completely unrelated, but with having 2 patents for my design with the boat, boats have been around for tens of thousands of years, most likely. Boats are older than domesticated animals and stuff. Simple boats like kayaks, rafts, flat rafts and stuff like that, flotation devices, if we want to call that a boat. The idea of navigating rivers in particular has been around for a long time. So in 2000, I think I got those patents. 2013 is when I started. 2015 might be the date I actually got the patent. So you're talking about tens of thousands of years probably from the time that boats were first being conceived of. And here I was that long into the future to be able to do something new. And because I was able to do that, it helps me to understand from a tangible point of view that you can, even if you think that something's already been done and done over and done over 100 times, you can't perfect it, you can't do anything new. You can. There's always room for a new angle or a new approach. And it wouldn't seem so, but people do it even in something like, let's say, like writing music. There's a lot of shit that gets rehashed, but there are people who come up with new beats and new lyrics and stuff. It still happens today, and music has been around for freaking ever. You know what I mean? So just because something's been around for a long time doesn't mean there isn't a new, fresh approach to take. And I'm living proof of that. So that gives me a lot of confidence going in, even though it's completely unrelated to the
Yeah.
debate itself.
No, yeah, it all connects. It does.
Right. And the other thing I would say is that because these arguments have been going on for that long, there is a wealth of information out there to tap into if you're diligent. You know what I mean? You can see what the opposition is going to lean on, unless he has some kind of crazy new angle to take, which he's already kind of showed his hand when he's talking about the Discord. I know he's extremely confident because he wanted to shorten the opening statements up to like 5 minutes because I don't need more than 5 minutes to prove you wrong, kind of thing. You know what I mean? And he basically just told me what he was going to say in his opening argument. And I wanted 15-minute opening arguments because I need 15 minutes to get my argument out because that's extremely complex. This is a very
Right.
complex issue. And so he's probably going to cop out to one of the existing arguments, or he may just go with the typical atheist argument about everything subjective, prove me wrong, or something like that kind of thing, So he may not even, I don't know how good of a debater or whatever, but when he said that he only needed like 2 minutes to give his opening statement, I was like, I'm not too worried about his opening statement or him coming up with a new angle at that point. You know what I mean? I'm more concerned with the established arguments. And I do think I have an angle. So I'm arguing against Descartes and I'm arguing against St. Thomas Aquinas and stuff like this. You know what I mean? So I'm arguing against some of the greatest minds in philosophy, but I'm also leaning on some of the greatest minds because those guys actually leaned on Aristotle and Plato. And so it'll be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see how it all goes. But part of the thing, and I don't blame you for being hesitant, because even though instinctively or intuitively, I would say I have always believed in this kind of objective ethics concept, just because of the observations I make in the world around me and in the history of how things have evolved ethically, and so to speak. Even though it seems like a lot of ways things are going downhill, there's actually been a massive improvement if you really stop and look at history and how violent and crazy history used to be, with the things that people would do to each other, torture and burning at the stake, all kinds of crazy stuff, and slavery and these different things. So I've really believed this for a long time. It's up until only the last 6 months or so I've been trying to formulate an actual argument for it. And when I first talked to you about this, and in my first debate with Ray, that was my first syllogism, and it was the first time I actually tried to argue it. And I know we had an after show from that debate, and I was talking to you and some other people, and you guys were really pushing me hard on things like termites and some crazy stuff that I had not even conceived of because I didn't really have a formal argument together. And so I really didn't present my case very well. And so I don't blame you for being hesitant that I would even be able to, but I've refined my syllogism like 4 times since then. And I've put in a ton of hours in research. So I do think that I've finally got it down to where my argument's solid. And I may still end up having to redo my syllogism a little bit, and I may come to the conclusion that I can't make a valid syllogism out of it. And it doesn't need to be a syllogistic argument to be true. So I may have to break away from that. But I think I've got it all together. And I know my argument is going to be solid. Whether or not my syllogism is valid, that's still to be worked on.
Well, I fully intend to, you know, why I guess the details of when and where the debate will be held, as far as on a YouTube channel, has that actually been determined, or are y'all still kind of ironing that out?
Yeah, no, my understanding is Tristan Gabriel wants to host it. I wanted to do it
Okay.
on your channel because you're such a great host, and I thought you did a great job moderating. But the guy, my opponent, being an atheist, he's like, are you sure you want to do this on a Christian channel? Because I don't think he didn't seem like he was very comfortable with that. And I started thinking about your audience, and I don't know if your audience would really be into it either. So I said, well, let me talk to another buddy of mine, and Tristan, he's all over it. He said he'd be happy to do it. So it'll be on Tristan's channel again. It's November 1st, 7 p.m. Eastern, and that's 21st Century Minds. I don't know if you have a link available you could plug.
Yeah,
into
let's.
the-
I am subscribed to him. Let me post that link as well. Well, I have to go in and. I don't know.
While you're doing that, let me tell you about this mirror point though. I would like to, now that I'm actually going to take on a hosting role, as our co-host role, I should say, officially. I'd like to set something up with you to plan ahead on a topic you'd be interested in discussing with us. The only thing I'm unsure of is, are you available Saturday afternoons? Because that's when they always stream.
I can be with sufficient, you know, for advanced knowledge. Yeah, sure, I can be.
Oh, perfect. Because I thought about you. The other guy that I want to have join us at some point is, you remember when we talked about evolution and I brought a couple guys to meet you, and there was that young man, Johnny, who was extremely polite, really smart
I
kid.
do.
Do you have?
Yeah, I remember
Yeah,
Johnny. I absolutely do.
absolutely. He's a great kid. I've talked to him on Discord, and I really like that kid. He's really nice. And so I want to get him involved in something at some point too. But there's something else I've been doing, which I think is very interesting, and I think you might want to be a part of it. But as I've been studying philosophy a lot, trying to develop my arguments about this subjective ethics and just studying philosophy in general, I've been studying a lot of not just Socrates, but yeah, Socrates. That's what I'm thinking of. So Socrates, as you probably know, he was basically killed. He forced to drink the poison, so they basically killed him. But they convicted him of basically like corrupting the minds of the youth and stuff like that. Well, it turns out that the reason that the people in charge hated Socrates so much is because he was really making people look bad with his style of argument, right? And they call it the Socratic method, and it's basically just asking the right questions so that the person, your interlocutor, ends up defeating their own argument. And that's what makes it so frustrating, pisses people off, is because Socrates isn't there saying, oh, well, I'm going to provide you with the right answer. He's letting you expose the fact that you don't have the right answer. It was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So I took down a list. There's a few questions in particular that he asked that really do a great job of exposing the inadequacies of our arguments. And I went onto that format that I've been telling you about, that free for talk, and I posted a channel. I set up a channel, and I posted, the title was, do you truly know what you believe? And I had people come in, and I explained to them that I just want to test. I'm just giving people an opportunity to test their belief against their own knowledge, you know. And I was very non-confrontational. I said, I'm not here to argue with you or to prove you right or wrong. I just want to know if you'd be interested in this little thought experiment. And so it was very non-confrontational. It was really cool. One person had a social issue that he wanted to test out, and he did a great job responding to the questions and picking apart his actual belief system. I was really impressed. And another guy, an Islamic guy, came in and wanted to debate Islam, and I put him through the same paces, and his argument really fell apart pretty hard, to be honest with you. But it was such a natural flow to the conversation, and he was defeating himself, that he never got offended or upset the whole time. And it was a really brilliant way of just showing what the problems are, not necessarily always in your conclusion, but in how you're getting to your conclusion. And we're all guilty of this. I'm no better than anybody else. You know what I mean? This could be used for any argument you have or any belief that you have. It's not just about God or just about politics or whatever, but those are some really good ones to test because people have really strong beliefs in those areas, you know, especially when it comes to religion and politics. So it was really interesting. So I'd like to do that and actually stream it because I do think a lot of people would like to watch something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, and going back to the conversation about starting a YouTube channel, I mean, sometimes it is helpful just to have something where you're like, just like it's like this stream, like I just did right now. Like I literally didn't know I was going to do it until like literally the moment I was like, I'm bored. I'm just going to start up a stream and see what happens. So there is that potential. It's almost like, you know, some people like just will turn on a video game and play video games or they'll put on Netflix. It's like for me, it's like, I mean, not that I don't do those things, but a form of entertainment for me is kind of like having conversations like this. I guess I'm kind of like weird like that, but I'm not the only one who feels that way, obviously. But anyways, you know, you can start a channel and, you know, you never know where it might go. Like, yeah, you might have higher vision of where it might go, but at the same time, like, you might be able to have a couple productive conversations if you just, you know, throw something out there. You never know, or you might meet somebody, or who knows. But we have
I'm just gonna start slow. Oh, go ahead, Jill. We'll let Jill go ahead. Then I'll say something. Go ahead.
Yeah, Jill, I just saw you join there. I didn't know if you heard something that, you know, you wanted to make a comment on, or were you just wanted to grace us with your presence?
Oh no, I just popped in. Not sure what the topic is, but
it's kind of just
random late stream.
Yeah, it is a random late stream where anything that kind of pops in your mind, not even necessarily a theological discussion. We're really just talking about like future debates and stuff, and basically ideas of kind of where we want to go with plans that we have for discussions and things like that, and the various channels that are going to might be hosting them and such like that. So it's really not anything too serious at this point, but at the same time, it's interesting because these are things we think about, like what are we gonna do next? You know, it's kind of, I do think about that a lot. So it's just kind of where we are right now. But
yeah. Okay, for your channel.
For my channel, for, you know, Objective Ethics has a couple upcoming, you know, discussions, debates, and ideas about things that, because people he's been talking to about doing things. And what about you, Jill? Do you have any big plans, or just, you know,
no. As far as debate is concerned, no. I think I've done enough debates on my channel on probably every subject except evolution. I don't really debate evolution. To me, it's a waste of time.
Really?
Yeah.
I actually think evolution is probably the most important apologetic topic to discuss.
Well, yeah, but the discussion is over in 10 seconds because every argument they present for their position, we just argue that there's a common inheritance, that being God or common designer. So they argue similarities in structure and DNA, and we're saying, hey, that too would also be you know, our position as well, that there's a common designer, so he would use the same basic building blocks. So I mean, to me, it's a waste of time because
believe it or not, Joe, a lot of people, they don't really make that connection. When they hear the evolutionists talk about genetic similarities.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. They don't, but the debate is over after that realization that you're looking at similarities as evidence of evolution. We're looking at it as evidence that there's a common designer that used the same basic building blocks. I mean, what else was he supposed to use? Mars rocks? I mean, it makes no sense to me why you would even argue or with an atheist or someone who believes in evolution. You know, it's just that we look at the world differently. We see the world differently. That's basically the end of the debate. So,
Okay.
to me at least, so that's why I consider it to be a waste of time. I mean, but,
That's an interesting perspective.
yeah.
Okay. Cool.
But I've debated several subjects, but I don't have too many suitors, but like I used to. But I want to debate that guy Taco, but he just keeps running from me.
Yeah, I got banned from his channel too, believe it or not.
Yeah, he banned me. That's going to be my next video on contradictions in the Bible. There are none.
Believe it or not, it was actually about I guess not evolutionists specifically, but about abiogenesis. I literally just presented a scientific fact to him that a lot of the amino acids we don't really know like how they could have arisen by. This is just a scientific fact. It's not a creationist fact. It's not like an evolution. It's just a fact. Like there are 20 amino acids used in life, and we don't know how a bunch of them can arise naturally. He got really upset at me pointing that out and banned me from his channel. So I thought that was pretty interesting. But anyways, he's not here to defend himself, so maybe. But this is what happened. Anyways, objective ethics. I don't know if you wanted to comment on that or keep going on your original train of thought.
I mean, there's a few things. I don't have the brain power to get into a debate about any of this stuff. I can tell you from the other side of the fence, the issues that I see with what's being said. You know,
Hold on. Your connection has severely degraded, so it's hard to understand what you're saying. I don't know if you're breaking up very badly.
I haven't moved. I've still been in the same room. Can you hear me now?
What you might need to do is leave the studio and come back, and sometimes that resets your connection. So let's give that a try.
All right.
Go into the StreamYard, leave studio, and then click the link and rejoin. See if we can fix it that way.
I invited Taco to my channel since he won't allow me to speak on his channel. But he likes to talk about evolution, and he got upset when I told him I really don't care if he believes in evolution or not. And he wants to discuss it so bad. He asks you for evidence or what you believe. Or, I'm not sure what stitching it's, but I think that's how he usually does his streams. He asks a Christian for evidence, or why do you believe what you believe, or something to that effect.
Yeah, I had that kind of the same experience where I went on his channel and I didn't really say anything that I thought was particularly controversial or, would evoke a strong reaction. He totally just booted me and told me to never come back. I mean, I don't know if that's like an official ban, but it was like, wow, he reacted a lot more strongly to what I was saying but another thing is he hosts debates and stuff. So I don't understand why he reacted as strongly as he did to a really basic argument against naturalistic origins. But I guess I must have said something that made him. Okay, we got objective ethics coming back. Let's see all right, let's give this another try. Let's see if
is that any better?
Yeah, much better. Okay, go on with what you were saying.
Oh, I was just gonna say, just from the outside looking in at this, evolution is not something I've ever debated. Obviously, it's not something I'm extremely knowledgeable about. But there's two issues. You got the issue of disproving or debunking specific claims about evolution or the evolutionary process. That's actually a separate argument altogether from when then you say, well, God did it, because the God claim adds a whole nother element that needs to be argued for. So that's a whole different. So I'm not sure when you just say, well, yeah, we've got all these, we're looking at the same evidence that the evolutionists are, but we just say God did it. Then that's just, you're just adding another element that then needs to be proven. is kind of how I would see that. But so I don't understand how that's winning a debate necessarily, but maybe I'm only getting part of
Well,
the
you're
story.
right. Well, the way I would respond to that is, and again, we don't have to get into debate because, first of all, I am about to fall asleep like sitting up. That's how sleepy I am right now. So I don't have the brain power anymore to actually debate myself. But just kind of responding to what you said, you're right. It is two questions. So like the first question would be, is evolution supported by scientific evidence, regardless of how else it might have happened? And then the second question would be like, yeah, like just like you said, like if it was an evolution, like does that how do we get to God from once okay, let's say we refute evolution. What's the evidence for God? So I guess is that kind of like the problem you're seeing? Like that
Yeah,
there
because your opponent could just insert, space aliens or all kinds of different stupid random stuff, whatever stupid thing they wanted to. You have to prove whatever, whether it's aliens or God or whatever, Anunnaki or however you're going to make the argument. You have to prove that exists, and then you have to prove the mechanism that actually gets you to the same processes of evolution. So you're adding so much more to that you have to the burden of proof is on so much more that Occam's razor says you should just stick with the evolutionary argument at that point. I mean, just work on debunking evolution. Don't try and assert unless you have evidence. If you've got evidence of a god or Anunnaki or space aliens, go for it. But I've been listening to these debates for decades. I've never heard or seen the evidence or a good argument yet. So I just think that that's just a whole separate hill to climb. I think debunking evolution seems to be difficult enough. And I hear people say things. I don't know enough about the issue to say if you're right, A's, or if other people are right. I don't know. I have to just trust people that have the PhDs, which is, as you know, that's where I put my faith. If I have to choose between two sources, I'm going to choose the people that have the PhDs and the peer reviewed work on it. That doesn't mean they're right. It doesn't guarantee that they are right, but I feel like that's a safer way to hedge my bet.
Well, I think two things are being missed here. That the argument is when you say, well, you say God did it. Now you're changing the topic. The topic is not origin. If you're going to argue what the origin of life is, we say God. You're arguing for evolution, which is not the origin. Okay, abiogenesis would be the origin. So if you're going to have a debate on evolution, and we say that, well, similar structure and DNA is not sufficient evidence for common descent, then that's the debate. We're not necessarily saying God did it, but that the evidence that you're presenting, similar structure, similar DNA, really doesn't move the proverbial ball forward at all. And it seems as though for years, decades, that has been the crux of the argument for evolution, that I see a structure, I see another structure, therefore they must be related in some way or descended or have common ancestor, et cetera, et cetera. That's an assumption that's being made without evidence. It's a philosophy in my opinion.
That's fair. I'm really tired as well. I could have swore that you said, well, the debate's over in 5 minutes because I say, well, we know how God did it. So for some reason, I just put the two together. Maybe I should have done that. I thought that's what your claim was, is that you know how it happened because God did it. And that was how you're winning debate. So I must have misunderstood something there.
No, it's just that the argument that's being presented is not sufficient. The evidence, I don't even think is an argument to say that two things. I think it's a non sequitur to say because two things are related or two things have similar DNA that they somehow have a common ancestor. That's a huge leap. And I would say you'd have to actually show those links.
Yeah, I don't think that's unreasonable to say that. I don't think that's unreasonable at all. But I think that, like I said, I think that's the argument in and of itself. So just debunking, or however you want to say it, I guess debunking the evolutionist claim, I think that's the debate. the abiogenesis is kind of a separate topic, really, from evolution itself. Evolution is change over time. Abiogenesis, how did the whole thing get started? There's kind of two, even though they are related, they are two different arguments. And then the argument of, so I guess what you're saying, if I'm understanding you correctly, is abiogenesis is the argument where you step in and say God did it. Maybe I missed that part or something.
Yeah, pretty much. The argument for common descent, the evidence that you're presenting, we agree is the evidence. We agree there are similar DNA and similar structure. It's just a conclusion you've drawn based off of that evidence that we disagree with. So that's the point. That's why I don't debate it, because we're looking at the same evidence, similar structure, similar DNA, similar protein molecules. The basic building blocks of life exist in every creature, in plants, and in some form or fashion. You have the basic protein molecules, 4 or 5 of them. I mean, what else would we expect for a common designer, for a designer to use, but the basic building blocks of life? So to me, that doesn't do anything to move the argument forward. I would prefer an argument from origin, rather than, well, how did things evolve? Because we both agree that things evolve.
It is interesting when two people or two groups of people, however you want to look at it, look at the same data sets and come to completely different conclusions. And I think about a lot about politics when I say that, because it's wild to me that people can do that. I mean, I could see two people like having some differences in opinion and having some common ground, but it's something like this, or we see this in extreme politics, left versus right, that they're looking at the same thing and they just got two completely different conclusions. And that's always kind of amazes me that could even happen. But it is,
yeah, it can happen. It happens all the time in these debates, because the question of origin is just being ignored. I don't have to answer the question of origin. I can just skip to, well, how did this plant, or how did this wolf wind up in my living room now lapping water, and I call it a chihuahua. To me, I mean, we both agree that things, we do see changes. We do see environmental factors in causing change. We see animals adapting. We all agree that these things happen, but it's the conclusions that are being drawn, I think, the illogical conclusions, I would say, that are being drawn based off of those observations.
Unfortunately, I have reached a point where I can no longer continue. I have to go to sleep. That's just where
You're
we
a
are at this
savage,
point.
I couldn't believe you were up this late. I was actually doing other stuff. I was in bed myself. So let me jump out of your stream. I'll let you and Jill close it out, and we'll catch up. Watch that video about the mind, the combination problem. Not tonight because you'll be asleep, but I do think you'll find it interesting. And then you and I will collab and make a plan and set something up. And then I'll hope to see you in the chats on November 1st if I don't talk to you before then.
Oh yeah. I can't guarantee that I'll be able to watch it live. I just never can. But I fully intend to, if I can, and if I can't, then I will absolutely watch it and maybe post some thoughts in the comment section. But yeah, keep me updated on all that and everything about everything. So good talking to you.
So is this going to be on your channel, this debate?
It's going to be, I linked it earlier. It's going to be on a channel called 21st Century Minds. The host is Tristan Gabriel. It's Tristan Gabriel's channel. And
I see. Okay.
There it is right there.
I see. All right.
It'll be on November 1st, Saturday, November 1st. And
is this guy a preterist, it looks like?
I think he was a preterist who then became like an agnostic. I guess he lost his faith, or I don't want to characterize him.
He's a graduate. He's a former pastor. He's got his master's degree from seminary, and then he was a full preterist at one point. Then he stepped out of that and then transitioned to an agnostic deist. So he's still he's still a deist. I believe he does believe in a God concept of some kind that exists maybe outside time and space or something, but he's no longer a Christian, so he's certainly not a full preterist anymore. But he speaks out adamantly against the full preterism. He finds that to be a very dangerous type of Christianity in particular. So he's been very vocal about that. He's debated some of the biggest names in full preterism. He's a really smart guy. He definitely knows his Bible. Like I say, he's got a master's degree in biblical studies, knows Greek. So he's a smart guy, and he's been very generous we've had a couple great conversations on his channel. I had my last debate, excuse me, was actually on his channel. So yeah, I expect it to be a good one. Jill, I'd love to see you there. I don't know if it's something you'd be interested in, because I'll be debating against an atheist and I'm an agnostic. So it may not necessarily be something you're into, but we are debating objective ethics versus subjective morality, which is the typical atheist view. So you might find it interesting to hear a different viewpoint on it, because I'm a skeptic. I'm an agnostic who actually does believe in objective ethics, but which is the outlier position, obviously.
Yes, yeah, it certainly would be. Yeah. Is it posted yet? I don't see anything.
He hasn't posted he hasn't made that thumbnail or anything for it yet. I expect him to do it sometime probably this week. So, but I'll reach out to him. I've got his number and everything. I'll make sure that he's got it dialed in, and he was really excited about it, but he's also got a lot of stuff going on. So I expect the link to come up fairly soon.
Cool. All right. I'll see you guys next time. God bless.
Yeah, I hope you guys have a nice night. Ace, thanks again for hosting, brother.
Yep.
All right,
yep.
see you.
Cool. Talk to you later.
God bless.
Later.
See you, Objective.
All right. There it is for your viewing pleasure. Until next time, this is just kind of a really random stream. I literally just it was usually time for me to go to sleep, but I wasn't sleepy. So I was like, you know what I'll do? Just start up a stream and see what happens. And that was actually a pretty nice conversation. So a couple things got covered, but anyways, until next time, God bless.